Like she will be the balance of light and dark, which in essence is kind of like the father, right? Because the father was
The
both.
father was a balance.
So, there was that whole back and forth. Is Anakin the father, right? What if Ahsoka becomes the father in her role as Ahsoka the White? I don't know. Maybe that's a discussion for another day.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power.
Why is the Force connecting us?
I am a Jedi. Always two there are.
We're a dyad in the Force.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Force Dyad Podcast. This is episode 58. Wherever, whenever, and however you may be listening, we are honored that you've joined us. We are super excited to bring you tonight's episode as we get to dive into Ahsoka, episode 5, Shadow Warrior. And we get all sorts of wonderful Clone Wars nuggets, Clone Wars Anakin, baby snips, Rex, Mauldalorians, all culminating in the reveal of Ahsoka the White and the blast off of the Purrgil to the hyperspace lanes. So yeah, it has to be probably one of the best singular episodes that Disney has given us to date, and we cannot wait to dive into it with you tonight. I'm your host, Obi Sean, and of course, I am not alone in this quest, as I'm joined by my co-host with the most, Jedi John. How you doing, buddy?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm ready to talk Ahsoka.
Are you super amped after that phenomenal episode this week?
It was good. I still haven't put my finger on whether or not it was just really that good of an episode, or if it was all the nuggets that just made it that good.
Right.
But I mean, obviously very, very enjoyable. So
yeah, I'm trying to figure out also if I'm blinded by the Clone Wars nostalgia, because I mean, seeing Hayden as Clone Wars Anakin it hit right in the childhood, growing up with that. So perhaps we're blinded by a bit of nostalgia, but that's what this discussion is for, to kind of figure out, are we jaded by our nostalgia, or was it just a quality episode? So, before that, we have our obligatory fantasy football update, right? Because when people listen, they want to come here to hear how terrible our teams, or
they want to know
good our teams are doing, right? And so last week when we recorded, it was about this time because it was Sunday evening, and you were well in the lead, and my team hadn't scored a touchdown, and yet I still managed to win. I still managed to beat Keith's team, who, for anyone wondering, his team's name is Wales. Let's just say it's the nickname for San Diego.
San Diego.
From Anchorman. So, but your team did well, finished well last week, right? You scored the most points in the league.
Yeah, my team, for not having 2 picks in the first 5 rounds, my team's doing exceptionally well.
Yeah.
So.
And you even sat your team's namesake this week, and your team is still doing quite well.
Yeah.
And
sorry, Geno Smith. Is that you?
That's true.
And he outperformed Jordan Love. I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, of course. It's only 1 point. I'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, and again, you're comfortably in the lead. But I actually have more points than you this week because of my savvy free agent waiver wire pickups, because my team is garbage. Yeah, Josh Reynolds and Zach Moss did really well for my team today. So I'm sitting at like 120. I don't know. I will comfortably win this week, which is not to say the same as the other league that we're in, where I sat DeAndre Swift, and I still would have lost. So it didn't matter.
Yeah, that league I'm in a shootout this week. I don't know. I think he has Chubb, and I've got Olave tomorrow night.
Whoa. That's inappropriate for this recording. Don't be talking about Chubbs. No.
Chubb. I mean, we can talk about more in a little while.
Oh, my. Oh, my Goodness. Well, before we dive into to our discussion this evening, we're going to do a bit of housekeeping first. Specifically, discuss or share with you a reminder about the convention that we're going to be taking part in here at the end of the month, CapeCon 2023 down in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, September 29th through October 1st. We are going to be in the podcast lounge live streaming the evening of September 30th, which is that Saturday. We go on at 7 p.m. So, but as far as the show is concerned, there's tons of vendors. They got a bunch of signings, and we are not the only one in the podcast lounge. That place is fully stocked with other shows recording throughout the weekend. So if you're in the area or you're looking for something fun to do that weekend, be sure to come out and check it out. If not, if you can't make it out, be sure to check in on their Facebook page. You'll be able to watch the live stream. It'll be broadcast from there. We'll be sure to put the link to that in the show notes. Also, if you're a new friend, first of all, welcome, or a returning friend, and you enjoy what you hear, do consider following or subscribing to the show. Also, if you can consider leaving a rating, review, etc., we would really appreciate it. It does really help the show out, and it's free. Plus, it also provides us some feedback for the show and what you like or don't like. And then lastly, be sure to check the show notes for links to our social channels, so we can continue the conversation well after the podcast equipment goes to bed. So that's it for housekeeping. And without further ado, let's dive on in. So, recap the episode real quick, and you laugh real quick. Okay, so I actually made an agenda for this episode because I feel like there's a lot to discuss and trying to keep it in its lane, right? And John's laughing because in the agenda I sent, I say keep it brief.
I just want everyone to understand your definitions of things. That's all I want. That's all I want out of this situation now. I just want everyone to understand your definitions.
So brief for me is 2 pages worth of notes. And I promise the recap is not going to be 2 pages of notes, but once I start writing, it just kind of flows.
It just flows. And I want to share with all of you.
So I just hold this up in front of the camera here, and just there it is. Yeah,
good.
Now good. I will say, because I'm getting older, I did blow up the font to be able to read it a little bit better, right? But if necessary, because again, I did take notes in it. So, but as far as our episode recap goes, all right, we've got Hera and the remaining X-Wing squadron landing on Cetos. Jacen comes out for a bit of a stroll with Chopper. And of course they find Huyang behind the one of the pillars holding Sabine's helmet, lamenting the fact that they never listen. They didn't stay together. And it's actually interesting.
Stay together. So it's such an easy piece of advice.
But they didn't listen, John. They never listen.
They're like children.
Huyang would probably actually say that. He would probably actually say that they're acting like children. But it's an interesting kind of foreshadowing for the entire episode, which has to do with listening, right? At various levels. So it's a very good foreshadow for the rest of the episode. So, also I did enjoy in that first scene when you hear the rock drop and Hera turns to Jacen and tells him to hide, right? He hides behind Chopper because we all know that is without question the safest place to hide, because Chopper has the highest body count of anybody in Star Wars. And if anyone's going to keep Jacen safe, it's going to be Chopper.
He is gonna, he's the bravest droid I've ever seen.
He's a war criminal. No, he's not. We love Chopper. Right. So we get our first World Between Worlds sort of look after that, right? With Ahsoka questioning, where she is, what's happened. We'll talk way more about this later on, obviously, but we get the initial, there's more there, you can learn more an initial sort of sparring with their sabers, because Anakin, of course, says the lesson is live or die. We then get the it cuts back to them on the platform, or them on the altar, whatever you want to call it, the henge, with Hera and everybody. And Jacen says he can hear lightsabers in the waves. So that is a very interesting scene, obviously demonstrating his innate abilities with the Force. It was interesting that it's implied, I think Hera heard it as well. But again, Jacen stresses to listen, right? Because Hera's not paying attention to him, and he's just trying to to get that point across. And I want to believe that she didn't actually hear it so much as she wanted to hear it. But it would be interesting if someone who is not Force attuned could hear into the world between worlds. So maybe we can talk a bit about that, bit more about that later. We jump back to them dueling, of course, and Ahsoka kind of gets the upper hand, saying that she has nothing left to learn from Anakin, and he proceeds to cut the walkway, and we fall once more into the Clone Wars, which is 6 minutes. I actually timed this. It's 6 minutes of amazingness. The actress who played young Ahsoka I thought she was perfect. And we get an experience. I mean, I don't know if you want to dive into that now, or if you want to wait till later to talk about that, but it's
I don't know. Do you want to dive in now? You want to expand on it right now?
You know what? Let's
pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. So let's skip through let's keep the recap brief.
Let's keep it brief. Yeah.
Right. So we get 6 minutes of amazing initial Clone Wars with Snips and Anakin, and then we get a second expansion on that with Ahsoka by herself initially during the Siege of Mandalore, which again was amazing. We get Rex, like we get phase 2 Rex in that one. In the first scene, we got phase 1 Rex, which was awesome. You get the Mauldalorians, which was excellent. Even though I think, and I didn't have a problem with this, but I think they were CGI. I don't know that they were physical forms, but if they were physical, I mean, either way, looked amazing. We get the discussion between Anakin and Ahsoka that, he doesn't recognize the battle. Obviously, we all know why he doesn't recognize the battle, because he's off doing not savory things at this point, or he's preparing to anyways. And then we get the standoff between him and Anakin and Ahsoka in his sort of Vader form, which was, again, awesome. I'm going to say awesome like probably 100 times tonight.
It was awesome.
Wow. And so she gets booted back out into the world between worlds, where the duel sort of finalizes. And I say duel loosely. I don't know that we can talk about that. We're going to talk about this later, but I don't know that Anakin obviously was going whole hog at her during this battle. But regardless, she defeats him, takes his saber. She has this moment of darkness, which was really well shot. And then she casts his saber aside, and he says, "There's still hope for you yet," because she says she chooses to live. And so with that, he fades away, and Ahsoka comes back. She is rescued out of the sea, and is brought back on board and heals and does all that stuff. Upon waking, right, we are treated to her psychometry, which is the ability to sense Force echoes the way that Cal Kestis does in Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor. And so she's able to see the scene with Baylan and Sabine on the henge after she was removed from the scene. And she learns that, of course, Sabine's on board the ship. Hera is like, well, how do we find her? And it's the one thing that we got right. And that from the last episode,
we got something right. We got something right.
And so Ahsoka determines that the Purrgil are their best hope. Meanwhile, Hera's getting chewed out by Mon Mothma in the most like Mon Mothma way, right? Like she's upset with her in the way like a mother is upset with her daughter, right? And she's like, but I can't do anything about this, which is probably baloney. Regardless, Ahsoka determines, yep, we're going to use the Purrgil. And, you know, I said during the last episode that I thought the ghost was going to be the thing to connect with them, because I didn't think Ahsoka was coming back immediately. But we get the reveal of Ahsoka the White, which was awesome. and her ability to connect with the Purrgil to request a lift. Which was funny because the way that scene was shot. I had a serious Finding Nemo vibe from it, right? When they, you know, I wanted Dory to come out and go, it says we got to go to the back. What? So, but yeah, the New Republic shows up at the end to basically bring Hera and Ahsoka back for what will inevitably be probably Hera's court-martialing, assuming they get that far. But the Purrgil all swim out into space. I love Carson trying to stall, and he's like, "All right, you're not gonna buy what I'm about to sell you, but here we go."
We're gonna try it anyway.
Yeah, and so we're treated to a wonderful cinematic scene of the Purrgil flying out into space to blast off into hyperspace. So that end scene was, again, I thought really well shot. The CGI was well done. And so that's the end of the episode, right? So there, I kept it brief. It was only like 10 minutes, I think.
You didn't even go to your second indents. Right.
No, I did skip over all of the indents actually, because otherwise that is going to, yeah, we'd spend 35 minutes just on the recap. So, so let's break things down, right? So that's the episode recap. Let's dive into a few things first. Let's start with initial reactions. Favorite scenes, questionable decisions. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts?
Favorite scenes. Wow. Anything with Anakin in it, top notch. No real issue there. I did say we were going to get a lot of Hayden since we were going to theaters in certain areas of the country. I'm like, if they're going to theaters, it means Hayden's in it a lot. And we got quite a bit of them to open up the episode. So I was not upset about that. Love the flashbacks. I thought it was interesting that they chose not only like the first battles, but also Ahsoka's last battle during the Clone Wars. And then just kind of those moments of, we heard that line a lot in the Clone Wars. Like, I've always, like, Jedi were supposed to be keepers of peace, but I was always a soldier. So, and Anakin explained it during it, like when Obi-Wan was training him, it was peacetime. It was completely different when he was training her. So, I love the line that if you stop if you stop fighting, you will die. Yeah, it speaks to me on multiple levels. We don't get too much into mental health and all that good stuff, but you know, like if you lose the will to live and the will to fight, I mean, you stop moving forward and you die, right? So, really powerful quote on multiple levels, not just for what Ahsoka's going through right now, but how people can relate to it. Yeah, I mean, those are probably the favorites. I mean, seeing Captain Rex live action, pretty sweet. I'm pretty sure it was not Tamora in that suit. Um,
It could have been him. It could have been him in that suit, of course.
maybe.
I don't know. He's not that he's I shape wise, he's fine. I think he could have fit in that just fine.
You can say that if you want, I guess. Yep. And then yeah. But yeah, I think those are probably my favorite parts. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I mean the pretty much again anything with Anakin in it was I overall I really enjoyed the episode. The Clone Wars flashbacks were obviously the highlight. The way that a lot of those scenes were shot. I've seen some people complaining about, oh well, we didn't get any of like the backgrounds. It was all hazed out by the fog and whatever. But those snapshot or those quick flips to Anakin walking into the fog, the transition to Vader, and then the transition back to Anakin. When I watched that the first time, because I watched it back to back. Like I spent 90 minutes watching this because I enjoyed it so much the first time. When I saw that the first time, I had to rewind. I was like, whoa, hold on, what? That was awesome. The interactions between the two of them were very, very similar. Like I feel like Hayden was channeling his inner Matt Lanter, and I did think that the young Ahsoka, she at many points sounded a lot like Ashley Eckstein. Obviously it's not her, and that was another thing or critique I guess people were having with this, was like, man, why didn't they overdub Ashley's voice? And I'm like, well, if they're going to do that, why wouldn't they overdub Matt's voice, just to keep it fair, right? And so, but I wouldn't have wanted either of those, because I thought the way that they interacted was great. This is the Clone Wars, yeah, no kidding, like that. I actually audibly laughed at that, because that was such a Jedi Knight Anakin response, and we didn't really get that ironically in the prequels, right? We didn't kind of get that side of Anakin, unfortunately. So
we also didn't see him in very many battles, so
that's true. That is true. And the one big one we did, right? He's a prisoner, and then he gets his hand chopped off. So I will say, beyond the Clone Wars stuff, right, which again was excellent. We got almost 10 minutes worth of flashbacks. It's not even really a flashback, right? As so much revisiting a memory. But I will say I was confused at the back half, because the front half of this episode was just loaded, right? And and then the back half felt kind of, this is going to be my question mark, or things that missed the mark. And this is going to be a minor sort of critique, in that the back half did seem to drag a bit, and
it got into the same trope that they've been in the whole series so far. They pick a scene out, and then they expand that scene instead of just getting through it. Go back to the training scene with Sabine and Ahsoka on the ship, and then you get to the Purrgil attachment. We know what she's doing. Anyone that's, I mean, obviously, if you haven't seen Rebels, you don't know what she's doing, but I mean, you still could probably figure it out.
Well, and I think also people are going to be like, well, because they're not going to remember that she knows how to do this, because you actually don't see her do this outside of Tales of the Jedi, right? I don't think she does this even in the Clone Wars, but I could be wrong. Somebody, correct me if I misremember, but
no, it was always Anakin dealing with animals in the Clone Wars,
right? And she doesn't do it in the she doesn't do it in Rebels. So the only time we actually ever see her calm a beast is in Tales of the Jedi, right? So if you haven't seen it, then you're like, well, what is this? How does she know? What is she doing? So
She Mary suited again. Don't worry about it.
Oh man, that's don't say that, because there are people out there who are like, why is, never mind. I'm not even gonna get into that.
Yeah. Don't get into
I'm
it.
not gonna get into that. But
it's a place on the internet we don't want to go.
but the way that they kind of stretched that the last, frankly, 25 minutes was strange. I don't even know that. Thinking about the scene where Mothma's talking to Hera about being forced to come back, right? I don't even actually know if that was necessary. Like that could have been like a side thing. Like, hey, in passing, I got hailed to, we got called back, right? And so it was weird that they kind of added that in, other than to say, well, the New Republic doesn't really care about this particular mission. They don't believe it's real, but we already kind of got that before. So I don't know that it needed reinforcement.
I think part of it was just that, they needed the excuse that Hera had to go back. That way Hera wasn't with Ahsoka.
Ah, got it.
I think that was just a plot device.
Fair enough. I mean, honestly, she explains it at the end by saying he's too young to be jumping intergalactically, right? Or so, I mean, I would have been fine with that too, because I didn't think that he was old enough to be flying through hyperspace rings either. But here we are.
Here we are, child endangerment.
So, but it's obvious that Jacen has powers, as Huyang tells Carson, who's then's like, okay, yeah, we'll go up and we'll just fly around again. So it's a tale of two halves, right? You get the excitement of the first 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, and then the back half, which is obviously heavily story laden, character development laden. And again, if you haven't seen Rebels, then you don't even know what she's doing or what she's becoming, and it has no relevance to you other than the fact that her new outfit looks awesome. I think we're on to 20 now of the awesome counter, but she looks great, in the new get up. So did you have anything that was like, you didn't care for, or did that pretty much encapsulate it there?
The only thing that I would argue for is I wish that Hera was going on the mission with her. It's kind of weird that they brought her in just to split off again.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're trying to avoid certain things like getting court-martialed or anything like that, going and finding your proof. That would have been the solution to me,
Mm-hmm.
I suppose. But then again, she was getting direct ordered to go back to the fleet. So
yeah, and the one person who was going to help her is now not in this galaxy anymore. So
right,
it'll be interesting to see what happens there. All right, so the big sort of takeaway, or the big message from the first 20 some odd minutes, right, is live or die, right? And so what do you think he meant, or he was trying to convey to her from a lesson perspective, as far as that's concerned?
Well, I think the biggest thing was that she still controls her destiny. So, and I kind of take that back to the Mortis arc from Clone Wars. The light side is imbued in her, because the daughter gave her life to save Ahsoka. So, I think Ahsoka is one of those beings in the Star Wars galaxy now that is just they are going to choose their own destiny. So, she won't be gone until she chooses, similarly to Obi-Wan, when he decided to become one with the Force, and he was at the end of his path. It'll be very similar for Ahsoka, I think.
So you think that she will exist in perpetuity until she chooses not to?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a piece of it that, yeah.
Interesting. So like the way,
just my theory, similar to the daughter,
So like with the Moray.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. I would not have actually thought about that from that sort of interaction between him and her.
Because you get that feeling when they're in the world between worlds, you get that Anakin. I mean, you got that in the Clone Wars too, but Anakin is the dark side, is that side of it, like the brother. So
The son.
and when you view Ahsoka and Anakin, they're not it's not father daughter, it's daughter brother, or it's sister brother.
So you don't think that Anakin, and I guess this is kind of jumping ahead to the next point, but you don't think that Anakin now, he isn't the father. I'm not going to say he is the father, right? But he now possesses the ability to actually control the Force in the way that Anakin should have been, right? Like harnessing both sides of the coin, right? But he just gave into the dark side and lost the ability to come back.
Yep.
So you think that Anakin, so you think he still represents only the dark?
At least parts of it. I mean, like you said, he could be harnessing it a little differently now, but I think he's still the opposite for Ahsoka.
Okay.
Even though Ahsoka still sees, like, I mean, she saw Anakin, so she believed it was a good visit until, the duel was engaged.
And until he got his Sith eyes.
Yeah,
But okay, so my
Okay.
thinking on that was, so the live or die type thing, right? It goes back to what you were saying earlier regarding, losing that will to fight, right? Then you will die, right? And we kind of talked about it, I think, last episode, in that what was Anakin's role going to be in this experience, right? In this encounter. And I had mentioned, or we had talked about the idea that whatever sort of lesson or flashback or what have you that they experienced together was going to release her from her guilt that she kind of feels for, or felt, not didn't kind of, that she felt for leaving him, and the fact that she to some extent blamed herself for his fall, right?
Yeah,
And
Balin brought it up last episode.
Yeah. And so, we get that during the second flashback or memory from the Siege of Mandalore, right? With, my legacy is that of death and destruction, death and war, or death and destruction. I can't remember exactly what she said, but, and Anakin's like, no, you everything that I know, right? And I am in, like, I am now a part of you. Like, my entire being is a part of you, basically. Just like Obi-Wan instilled all of his knowledge into me, and Qui-Gon into him, and so on and so forth. And, she says, or he says, right, that she's a legacy. She comes from she's now part of that legacy. And, she says the thing about how my legacy is this, and he's like, no, because that I'm more than that, right? Like, that's not my legacy. And so of course he takes offense to that. And she says, the thing about him being more powerful and dangerous. And so the way he says, is that what this is about? Right. And then he becomes Vader shortly after, of course, or fallen Anakin at that point. It's almost like he's recognizing that her angst, or the thing that causes her to lose focus, is that fact that he became Vader. And if she had been there with him, perhaps things would have been different, right? And I think in a way, not entirely, of course, but I think in a way that interaction with him, the living and, live or die, is his way of saying, your actions didn't cause this, right? Like, if this is what's going to be holding you back, then you're going to fall the same way that I did. And I think that's what we get when she takes the saber from him and she holds it in front of him, right? This is her, like, ability, or not her ability, but her moment in seeing, like, that fall, right? And then immediately she comes back, she controls it, right? And I guess that kind of goes to your point about her being that object within the Force, right? That can kind of tap into a different side of things. If she's able to control it in the way that he is, right? Like, that's his skill now, is as redeemed Anakin and this will kind of go into the next thing, is he's able to do what Anakin was unable to, right? So he's like the pure form of Anakin being the chosen one, being the balance between light and dark, is that he's now there. He's now able to control that, and her overcoming that guilt or that resentment or what have you will allow her to live, as well as understand that she controls, she has this much more control over her outcome, right? Like I feel like she at points was thinking, or not thinking, but she was just kind of going through the motions, and now she's choosing to like take back control of things, throughout this encounter.
Yeah, I agree.
So, so what do you think as far as Anakin's appearance? Do you think it was actually him? Do you think it was, if it was him as a Force ghost? Do you think it was who? What was that interaction?
So it's really difficult. It's really difficult for me, because we really don't know everything on how everything within the world between worlds operates, right? But I would have to say that is a version of him that is in there. Like it wasn't a Force ghost. Like Force ghosts don't do that stuff, or so far they don't do that stuff. So I think there's a different type of presence that happens in the world between worlds. It wasn't a dream. I mean, we saw her come back into reality from it. So I don't think it was a dream necessarily, because it would have been awkward if she would have been underwater drowning for the first 20 minutes of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it was I think it was definitely in the world between worlds. That was Anakin. Some version projected of Anakin, potentially from her thoughts, but it couldn't have been from her thoughts, because, like I said, like it can't be a dream because he was pushing her to get past whatever was controlling her, basically. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it was a dream. I think it was truly just him.
So in that case, it would have had to have been, well, not a Force ghost, right? But like Anakin as he exists within the Force, like he's obviously not a ghost, right? Like, so perhaps within the world between worlds, the Force ghost can actually become,
can do something
like not living, right? But tangible, right? Like you can actually interact with them. Because I thought it was interesting with all the flashbacks, right? That it was clear that the Anakin in the flashbacks, well, in the Ahsoka for that matter, their memories, right? Because nothing changes from the timeline, of course, right? So, and they didn't go through any sort of like portal, so to speak, right? But they're interacting almost in the way that they have the existing knowledge, right? And the whole point of them being in these two situations is for Anakin to try and get across this message. And, the thing about Ahsoka wondering if she's only going to be able, or if she's only going to have to teach her Padawan how to fight, right? And then Anakin's like, do you even want a Padawan? Because teaching's not all that's cracked up to be, right? And, just to kind of get under her skin. But I feel like that was older Anakin trying to get under older Ahsoka's skin, right? Through the memories. Right. So I'd like to think that the Anakin that we see in the War Between Worlds is, like you said, kind of it's him, but post Return of the Jedi, right? So it's his redeemed self, right? And right. Which makes sense that he would then be able to interact within the World Between Worlds because he's a light-sided version of himself. But like I said, I think his ability to blend back and forth between light and dark, is, the control that he was never able to possess in becoming, in going from Anakin to Vader, right? He was never able to control both sides of it. And so I feel like he is the chosen one in this form, right? Because he's able to utilize both sides of the Force, and do so in a way that is still able to, again, teach. And I said it earlier about him not going hog wild on her in the experiences or in the interactions, because again, you go to the stupid comment boards on the internet and people are like, how does Ahsoka best, one of the most powerful characters in all of Star Wars? And it's like, well, because he wasn't trying to kill her. Like that wasn't the point.
The point was to train on a lesson. Like,
right.
It was no different than her training with the clones to be able to defend their blast, like in Tales of the Jedi. So that's I just stay off those boards, dude. I can't. People bother me too much. I can't do it. It is good sometimes to get the perspectives, but at the same time, I'm like, oh god, they're just so negative about everything.
Well, and I feel like there's points for criticism, of course, because nothing's perfect. And we'll kind of get into that with some of the IMDb reviews later. I did print a few off, but if Anakin wanted to defeat her, he could have easily done it, right? And that was not the point. And so, yeah, I mean, that wasn't the angle. So, it would be no different than, well, I guess we'd never seen that before, right? With a Force ghost, so to speak, continuing training. So certainly unique for the series, or for the saga. So that was,
like, actually, I mean, you could call it sparring, I guess, but it wasn't really even sparring. It was pretty intense lightsaber combat.
Yeah, 100%. It would have been interesting to see if, like, even just to, like, for one of them to get nicked with the saber, just to see if it was actually real, or if it was solely within the world between worlds. So, and like I said, the ability for her to quote unquote win there at the end, experience that brief moment with the dark side. And I love the way that scene was shot, because I actually thought that her eyes going orange was a reflection of the saber in her eyes. But it does actually cut back to her normal eye color. It's literally like 2 or 3 frames before it cuts back to Anakin's face, but her eyes go orange, then they go back. So she actually does in that, and the saber doesn't move positions, right? So it's not like the light all of a sudden magically stopped reflecting into her eyes. So it's interesting that she, in that moment, right, she sort of allowed the rage to kind of overcome her, right, briefly, before casting his saber away, and very much in the way that Luke casts away his saber in Return of the Jedi, right? Like, I will not fight, the whole "I will not fight you," and that's at the very beginning, right? I'm not going to fight you. Oh, I've heard that before, right? So, really good callback there to Return of the Jedi. Anything else on, like, the World Between Worlds, Anakin?
I think there's just still too many questions that are not explained, so I don't have anything else currently. As far as how things work there, like, I mean, we've seen it now in multiple episodes of Rebels and then this, but we never really got good explanations of how everything works. Mm-hmm. So it's still a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, and I suspect that we probably will never get the full explanation of it, right? Because
probably not.
No,
because they used this one way different than they used it in Rebels. So
yeah, I suppose. Well, kind of. I mean, you do get the
Palpatine allowed Ezra to see visions,
right?
but they were manifested by Palpatine.
You don't think that
And I don't think that was
portal
actually in. I don't think that was actually in the world between worlds, because he needed Ezra to open it still.
right? Yeah,
So that wasn't even in the world between worlds. So that's
yeah, because it was on Thrawn's ship. I was gonna say
Right.
that the fact that they could peer into past events, specifically with Kanan's death. I mean, obviously that wasn't them falling into a flashback, right? But in essence, they were viewing a moment in time, right? So you're right. They
Right.
didn't interact with it, obviously, the same way that we did here. But yeah, I don't know. It's I like having the mystery. I like not having everything behind the curtain revealed. So I'm okay if we never learn what this is or what that was. Jacen, right? So real quick, talk about Jacen before we discuss Ahsoka's rebirth or baptism in water, what have you.
Yeah.
So his force sensitivity. Do you? There's a lot of fun speculation going on the interwebs again about whether or not he'll be trained. Would he be trained, or do you think Hera would protect him from that because of what happened to Kanan?
He's too old. This is an interesting one, right? I think he could be trained. I don't see a reason why he couldn't be. I wouldn't doubt if they've been training periodically already.
Who?
Maybe not Hera, but like Ahsoka. Ahsoka knows Jacen. So but Ahsoka hasn't been really the teaching type, I guess you could say. So I wouldn't doubt that he's learned some, though, because he obviously has abilities. So I'm sure those abilities are getting nurtured somehow, even if it's not full Jedi training.
So who would train him going forward?
Hu Yang.
He already said no. I love that, by the way. That interaction between them was fantastic. Will you help me build a lightsaber? No.
No.
No, I will not do that. I will not do that.
But that's just it. I think his desire is there, so he's going to be trained, or he's going to just do it himself. It'd be cool to catch Cal Kestis hanging around somewhere, though. I don't think we see him, though.
I don't know that fits. That would work very well for the timeline. I could. I think he'd just be too old, and it would be really, really random, especially when theoretically you'd have Ezra, Ahsoka, and Luke able to instruct him.
I mean, if Ezra comes back, there's good potential for him to train him,
right?
Being that his father was his master.
Now, would Ezra be capable of training? Because I mean, I guess Kanan technically was never a master, right? He was only a knight, so in the same breath, I guess, yeah, it would be totally fine. Question is, would he want to? Would he want to? Right? Because
we don't know what his mindset is right now. We don't know where his head's at.
We don't even know if he's alive. Like,
yeah, that's also very true.
We're speculating about potentially deceased Jedi training Jacen Syndulla.
But I enjoyed him being force sensitive. I enjoyed him being able to hear what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
The lightsaber clashes, all that good stuff.
Now, back to that comment I made earlier when I was doing the recap. Do you think that Hera actually heard the sabers, or she just heard what Jacen wanted her to hear?
It's a good question. I think my answer to that is I think he probably embedded those, that as some Jedi can do, gave her the thought that it was there a little bit, because I don't think she's force sensitive, so that I've ever been shown. So other than she's one of the best pilots in the entire galaxy, so in general the best pilots tend to be some type of force sensitive.
Yeah, and I mean, if Sabine's
outside of Han Solo,
right?
That's not how the Force works.
But see, that's the thing. That's Han's never allowed himself to tap into it. I mean, the number of times that Han Solo has escaped various predicaments. There's the whole luck, right? The gambler and everything like that. It's just
the dice. The dice do everything for him.
Exactly. But yeah, if Hera was some level of Force sensitive, it wouldn't surprise me. Given again that Sabine is being trained to some extent to not necessarily harness the Force in the same way that a Jedi would, but presuming she opens herself up to it, she listens, right? And goes back to the whole message of the episode, right? Of listening,
More
right?
listening.
Jacen obviously listening to what's being presented to him. Hera,
The New Republic not listening to anything.
exactly. Anakin, Ahsoka listening to herself and to some extent what Anakin is trying to teach her. Listening to the Purrgil, right? Or allowing the Purrgil to listen to you, right? Like listening is at the forefront, obviously, of this whole episode. So the last sort of topic, right, is Ahsoka's transition to Ahsoka the White, officially in live action. So will we see a looser version? I kind of mentioned that earlier, right? Is her sort of rebirth, her revival, going to bring back the Ahsoka that we know or we're used to, right, from Rebels and Clone Wars? Or will we see a wiser version, kind of like Gandalf?
I don't know. I think both those things are probably going to be true. I think we get a little bit a bit of both. I think she's going to use some of her, experience and newfound wisdom to analyze different situations in different light. So she'll find different solutions to them versus just, even Balin was trying to not fight. He did not want to fight her.
Right.
But that's the, and as he said, this is the only way you know. So I think there's a lot to be said about that. So I'll probably get a lot different things.
Yeah, I suspect that Ahsoka in her current form, like with her again, her rebirth is going to be, like I was saying earlier, what Anakin should have been or could have been had he allowed himself to walk the line. Like I think I was I think it was on a message board or something like that about the comparison to Gandalf, right? And there's actually a really funny IMDb complaint that we'll get to about the comparisons, right? And the fact that this person has not seen the cool sketch that Dave had made all these years ago of Gandalf talking to Ahsoka, right? Because that is in essence what she's become, is where Gandalf and Saruman were the light and the dark kind of wizard, right? Gandalf becoming Gandalf the White is the embodiment of Saruman, but able to control that power. And I feel like Ahsoka is going to be the embodiment of Anakin in the fact that not the embodiment of Anakin, but what Anakin could have been or should have been as the chosen one, bringing the balance of light and dark. Like she will be the balance of light and dark, which in essence is kind of like the father, right? Because the father was both.
The father was a balance.
So, there was that whole back and forth. Is Anakin the father, right? What if Ahsoka becomes the father in her role as Ahsoka the White? I don't know. Maybe that's a discussion for another day. But my question for you, so I had that right. Sean has a question for John, right?
And the surprise question that I love so much.
So I thought when we saw, I think it was at the beginning of episode 2, right? Or towards the end of episode 2, right? When Sabine cuts her hair and she's standing in front of the mural and Ahsoka comes up behind her, right? And she's wearing the hood and everything like that. And it's like, oh, it's that scene out of Rebels, right? But in the scene out of Rebels, she's Ahsoka the White, right? Does that mean that the scene at the end of Rebels is actually something that's happened after what we've seen right now?
It's possible.
Or is it or is it just a retcon?
So it's very possible that it could be a new scene that we have not seen yet. It's possible they go back to there. Sabine's looking at it. Ahsoka picks her up because they didn't find Ezra on this run. it's very possible that Ezra and Thrawn were separated and are still separated. So that could be the closing to this show, is that scene, you know? I mean, I hope we see Ezra, but it's possible that he's not, even with Thrawn. So we could be looking at a future scene still for the Rebels' final scene.
Wouldn't that be something if a show that ended, 6 years ago now, 6 years ago, that there would be obviously not that level of foresight, but the fact that they would have had something that didn't have any sort of finite time frame when that scene was shot. And I only thought about that because of what you said last week regarding what we see at the end of season 2 being actually what happens as a result of what Ezra does in season 4. And then I thought, wait a second, Ahsoka the White is at the end of Rebels, but we just got Ahsoka the White. So does that mean, and which then means that Sabine can't, if that is what it is, right? Then that means that Sabine has plot armor to
She's infinitely
that point, which would kind of nullify some of the upcoming tension that I know we're going to get.
Right.
But I just thought that was interesting.
I'm not currently worried about losing Ahsoka or Sabine in the show. I'm not remotely worried about losing them.
So I wonder where they build the tension at.
I don't know. I mean, it's obviously between the dark side characters. Like, there will be. I said it last time. Like, I think the two Padawans are gonna. I think Shin's flipping. I'll wait, because she already doesn't. She's very skeptical of the magic, so to speak. So.
Well, and I think that comes from Balin's skepticism with it as well. So we got 3 episodes left. Ahsoka's in the mouth of a Purrgil, blasting off presumably to wherever they took them initially at the end of season 4. So
yeah, hopefully they're on the same path.
I mean, the portal would seem to suggest that lane, that migration path, is going to take them to Purrgil. So I mean, we have to, that's where we have to end up next episode, right? So
I mean, I thought we were going to get there at the end of this episode. I thought they were going to show us.
Yeah. So all right, well, that kind of brings, I guess, the breakdown component for this episode to a close. What would you give it for a grade?
I'm going to go 9. I'm sure I'm lower than everybody else. I'm going to go 9.
Okay.
I mean, we can go like 9.2 maybe, but yeah, I'm right there. 9.0, 9.2, something like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm like those first 20 minutes are, I'm giving it like a 10 out of 10 just because of how awesome it was.
First 20 minutes, 10 out of 10. All the Easter eggs, the Clone Wars callbacks, seeing Sky Guy and Snips again, like awesome.
Yeah, and then the back half, with it being important but extended, right? But I don't know that it's enough to hurt it that much. So I'm going to give it I'll definitely give it my highest grade so far, which I'm probably going to be like a 9. I'll give it like a 9.3. So I'm going to give it like a 9.3. So let's go to the tape. All right, so according to IMDb, 14,000 ratings so far. We're not quite a week on from the episode. 9.4 out of 10. So, and there are 111 user reviews. As I said, I kind of already perused them. And unsurprisingly, there's a bunch of 10 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s. And so there are more positive reviews than negative ones. Posey Fan, for those playing at home, was a 10 out of 10. Perfect episode for them. So that part, he or she clearly enjoys the live action stuff more than the animation, because again, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but Bad Batch was not nearly as bad as they would continually review it. But I did go through and pick out a few of some of the worst performing reviews, some 6 out of 10s, some 4 out of 10s. I actually found a 3 out of 10. So, and the biggest sort of complaint, so there are a number of complaints, but one of the biggest ones I saw was calling the interactions between Anakin and Ahsoka fan service, right? Like they were saying that the only reason that people think that this episode's good is because they brought Hayden Christensen back, and that without it, this episode's garbage. And well, without it, the episode doesn't exist, right? Like, so, I mean, it's a core component of the episode, so you can't really like isolate that. Did you think it was too much fan service?
No, I kind of said that at the beginning though. Like, would I have thought this episode was that good if it didn't hit so many notes, from Clone Wars, from Rebels, from everything. So, I mean, I don't think it was too much fan service. I personally don't believe there's too much fan service ever. So, no. I mean, if you're fans of other content for Star Wars specifically, like seeing characters together again that you haven't seen ever together on live action. Yeah, well, I mean, sign me up for that. Why wouldn't I want that?
Yeah,
dumb complaint. Dumb.
Well, and again, kind of the common theme was, I feel like some people too, they just, aside from complaining just to complain, which is very real. Like the first complaint, or sorry, the first review that was a 6 out of 10, right? Says beautiful to behold, but taste him yet to acquire. And the first sentence says, I cannot get past the revisionist concept that Anakin had an apprentice and that this episode focuses very much on this. And I'm like, revisionist concept. This was something that George Lucas came up with 15 years ago when they developed the Clone Wars. It was George's idea to give Anakin a Padawan. So it's like, I don't know what's revisionist.
And then Dave Filoni created the character.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what's revisionist about it. And the fact that this same person thought the duel of the lightsabers felt obligatory and that Ahsoka's torment seems forced. And then said Anakin's presence feel like fan service. So it's like, tell me you don't know
any animation,
like
any animation, anything.
So, anyway, so that was one. There was a 4 out of 10, not great despite all the hype. So they're like, not sure why this got all the extra hype. Maybe it was just.
I think going into theaters and stuff like that, people might have been. I mean, they might have been expecting something crazy. Like,
true.
Like I said, like I expected them to get to Thrawn. At least show him on screen, with even if it was like a cutscene, like we have Ahsoka doing the Purrgil thing, or getting ready to do the Purrgil thing, but then on the other side of the galaxy, or in the other galaxy, in a galaxy far, far away, that one, or over there, you get the, they've arrived, they found Thrawn, you get to see his face to close the episode, like, I don't know, like, I was expecting to see Thrawn, knowing that it was going to theaters, because then you got Hayden for a long time, and then you launch Mikkelsen on live action also. So both of them just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like they could have easily, when Ahsoka's staring out the front window as they're blasting the hyperspace, right? They could have easily transitioned to Thrawn looking out the window of the Eye of Sion, right? Because they've made it now and they found him, and it would have been like a perfect face off. That would have been cool. So yeah, I mean, there were definitely some things that they could have. I agree. After watching the episode, I'm like, the first 20 minutes were movie theater worthy for sure, but then the back 25, I didn't really make sense, to be in a theater, that is. So another one, again, not great despite all the hype, like I said. As a Gen Xer, I have zero nostalgia for Anakin and the Ahsoka connection. I don't really like cartoons, but I watched the Clone Wars and Rebels in prep. And to be honest, I wasn't sure if it was needed. So the Purrgil thing. So this is why I highlighted this one. So out of Rebels, the space whales only show up a few times, right? Which is true, but it's mostly, it says, and mostly was on the nose, quote, save the whales kind of episode. I'm thinking the Purrgil are the reason that they're in a different galaxy.
Yeah.
Like the Purrgil are critical to this, and it's but then it goes on to say that the Anakin and Ahsoka, I've shipped them apparently, connection is as mostly from Clone Wars, but was never like a Han and Leia or Obi-Wan and Vader power coupling to me. And I was like, what the hell? So anyways, they go on to say there's an overemphasis on Anakin. Like, he's in it for 12 minutes of the 45 minutes. It's not that big of a deal. And they finish with it saying it's a definite low for the season. Like, wow. There was more about people complaining about Anakin being defeated by her. I kind of already touched on that. The last one I'm going to talk about is this one. Starts out, it says 3 out of 10. Episode that could have been condensed into 25 minutes. Yep. Okay. Can kind of get behind the length. It says, Dave Filoni keeps proving that he hates Star Wars more than anyone.
That's my favorite quote. That was my favorite quote of the season. That's it.
I'm like, I don't
need any more reviews.
I just wrote ha 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 like above that. I'm like, that has got to be the funniest, dumbest thing I have ever heard.
Hates it. He hates it. He hates everything that has to do with it.
If
anything, he hates fans like you. Like, that's it.
Like, it talks about Hera being dreadful. It says Emmy Depp, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, has proven no matter how wrong you are for the role, both actor-wise and physically, if you're Ewan McGregor's wife and you want the role, no matter how bad you are for it, then by golly, you're going to get it. Like, wow. I actually stopped, I stopped giving that review credence after they said that Dave Filoni keeps proving he hates Star Wars.
Craziness.
But like I said, IMDb 9.4 out of 10. So it is still the highest rated episode. Obviously of this series, it is one of the highest rated, if not the highest rated. I didn't get a chance to go back and look, but highest rated Disney Plus series episode. Of which there are many now. So we have been treated to a cornucopia, a plethora, if you will, of Disney Plus shows. And, for all the good and not so good that we get from them, we have to remember how fortunate we are to have how much stuff, all the stuff that we do. So, critique it, be critical of it, constructively, right? Plot wise, or character wise, etc. But at the end of the day, let us be thankful that we're not in the barren wasteland of content that like people like DC are, where they can't get anything worth a darn made, or who knows what lays ahead for all of our series, for all of our fandoms with the ongoing writer strike and stuff like that. So and again, hopefully that gets resolved soon, and that the actors and the writers and everybody get what they deserve. So I don't have anything else. You have anything else?
I'm good.
All right. Well, as we come to a close on this episode, I want to thank you all again for listening. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to our social media channels, as well as, if you do, again, enjoy what you listen to, what you're hearing, consider leaving a review, follow us, etc., etc. And again, Cape Con, September 29th to October 1st. We will be in the Pod Lounge the night of September 30th at 7 p.m. So, but with that, it's time for us to pop off into the world between worlds. So for Jedi John, I'm Obi Sean, and until next time,
may the Force be with you.
Force